everybody, thanks for coming to the KEV Talks Podcast. I just flew in, and boy, are my arms tired. Hey everybody, welcome to the first episode of the KEV Talks Podcast. If you are still here, you may remember me from the People Process Progress Podcast. Same feed, new name, new logos, all the stuff that you do when you rebrand. So why the rebrand? Why change it up a little bit? Because life changes. We change, we evolve. And I thought, I really liked People Process Progress, the focus on it. But let me take you back in the Wayback Machine, just as a history of myself, an example kind of why I thought this. Maybe there's some stuff that resonates with you. So I started podcasting in 2018 because I used to teach incident command system, incident management, taught some other stuff, tactical combat casualty care. So I like teaching stuff. And I thought, you know what, I'm not doing that as much. I moved out of the emergency management and public safety space and into private sector project management. Started podcasting a little bit before I did that, around the same time. But basically that call to teach and share and podcasting I enjoyed. Jocko Podcast, Joe Rogan, a whole bunch of different other podcasts at the time. And thought, you know what, let me give it a try. Was not good at it at first. My audio wasn't great, but I had some great conversations with friends of mine. They were all in. People are excited. And so that was the Between the Slides podcast, where I focused a lot on incident management and incident command system, then into project management. And that makes sense, right? When you teach things, when you get into something, you go with what you know. And I kind of stuck with that for a while, did some more interviews, and then thought, you know what, it's time to grow a little bit more, maybe not be so niche, however you want to say that. And so I rebranded to the People Process Progress Podcast, and I had more interviews, broke down processes, especially project and program management stuff. How you do this, make suggestions so we can all make progress. And that was fun and that was great. And that took the show over 50,000 downloads. And, I keep saying that, but that was my target. Like, hey, I want to get 50,000 downloads. It seems like a cool target. And we hit that this year. And I say we because you, the listeners, did that. And the guests that I had that shared their great stories. And I enjoyed that. I had a lot of fun. And just this past few months, I've had some big life changes. I spoke on that a little bit in a previous episode. I'm going to get more into that as we get more into the KEV Talks podcast, where I had a panic attack. And I've changed a lot of my life. I've changed for the better. I think I've evolved as a human personally. Professionally, I had to make a lot of changes. And so I thought, you know what? This is something that's I think it's a little more catchy, KEV Talks podcast. I got some feedback from other folks. They agreed. And so it's going to be more from the areas that I know that I've lived in, both personally and professionally. In healthcare, I was a hospital corpsman. So I've seen both the military aspect of that and now the private sector aspect of that. And so give my insights, talk to people from that area and, all different aspects of healthcare, navigating the system, to project management in healthcare, to technology in healthcare. To technology, I started after I got out of the Navy. And before then, I liked building computers, playing computer games. And then I started, crawling under desks, fixing computers, swapping out hundreds of towers for big, Windows upgrades, and then software, and then management, and then doing that kind of stuff in the technology space. And I've always been kind of a techie person and was fortunate my dad was too, so got exposure there. Wellness. I've exercised on and off most of my life, particularly in the past 5, 6, 7 years, pretty regularly, either at home or in my garage gym, doing jiu-jitsu, and wellness too, with mental health, with meditation, mindfulness. So we'll touch on some of that kind of stuff. And, the last area is public safety. So I've spent both when I was a teenager as a volunteer firefighter, then, not quite public safety, but in the military doing medical stuff. And then as a volunteer firefighter, and then a paid EMS captain and incident management kind of specialist down in the city, and doing a lot of incident management, and have a lot of great friends, some of my best friends that are in public safety, and going to have an episode with a good buddy of mine and soon in a few weeks about substance abuse in public safety, and going to focus on public safety, where I get to talk to an author who wrote a book about mindfulness for public safety folks, and want to keep that going because what's changed in me is, one, a better focus on my health, which I recommend for everybody, and also an expansion of taking the time to read more, to implement these changes for my mind, my body, my spirit, and I'll touch on that for wellness too, spirituality, how that's really helped, how that gives really just hope, right? And it can be whatever spirituality you think, and that's, again, we'll get more into that in future episodes, but that's why KEV Talks. That's why the change. And I hope that you enjoyed it. I hope it's helpful for you all. I know, and I've looked at Google Trends recently. I kind of was going to focus on that kind of stuff of there's a lot of folks that are hurting out there. There's a lot of folks that are overwhelmed with shitty news, think the world is horrible. I'm also reading a book called Factfulness, which is pretty eye-opening. And the good thing is the focus of the book is basically to remind us, like, yeah, there's bad stuff that goes on, but it's not as bad as the media latches onto, because you'll come to see the media and politics and sales and competition, negative stuff is more popular than positive stuff, basically putting it out there, right? And we latch onto it. And so let's stop latching onto the negative stuff. I'm going to try and fill this podcast up with positive, and I'm not, all daisies and roses and stuff. I have a pretty realistic perspective on the world. But I'm just going to give some examples and my 2 cents on this kind of brief first episode to let you know why KEV Talks, what's the evolution of it, and what are we going to focus on. And so I'm going to give some feedback of things that I've gone through in the past, probably 6 months or a year, and probably resonates with a good bit of you. Go to KEVTalkspod.com and let me know. There's a feedback form there. What you think about these things, or, have you experienced them? And then there's also a guest request. So similar to the People Process Progress podcast.com, but it's KEVTalkspod.com, and let me know what you think. So the first thing is healthcare. And I'll just say right out of the gate, and again, these are all Kevin Pinnell's personal opinions, not of any company I used to work for that I work for now. Probably need to start putting this ahead of the podcast. So I'm going to be a little more open than I was. I think I was pretty open in People Process Progress, but give my 2 cents and stuff that I've learned, right? Good and bad. So the healthcare system, navigating the healthcare system sucks. If you don't have an advocate, and depending on where you go, right, it can be hard to get the right care. It can be hard because you have to fill out the same paperwork in 4 different offices that seemingly should have the same electronic health record system. And that's not awesome. And that's my second thing is, pie in the sky for me as a technology guy and a healthcare guy and a guy in healthcare technology is there should be one big electronic health record you have that goes with you everywhere. It is technically possible. Will it take work? Yeah, absolutely. Also, we should have some good project management in healthcare. I've been very fortunate to learn from folks that I've worked for and with. And project management in healthcare is huge because when we do a bunch of work, it has an impact down the line. And it's easy to lose that connection, to think, well, I'm working on this project and I'm not right there at the bedside, so it's not really affecting patient care, but it is. So it's really good to think about some of that. So that's kind of some healthcare things that I've experienced and that I'll touch on as we come up in the next months and maybe years, right, as we blow this podcast up. And if you can, share this podcast on Apple Podcasts. That's the big dog, right? Let's be honest. If you leave a review and a rating, it'll help bump it up, help get the stories out, help get the guest stories out, right? I had a great interview with Dr. Tracy Marks. Really good stuff there on anxiety and mental health. The second thing for me is technology and how we should use technology to enable it. And we have, by and large, but it's also become a crippling thing. And this is my second thing, right? So technology can really help us. Like podcasts to me can really help. I can choose to watch a positive thing, or I can choose to listen to all the negative crap that comes off the major networks. And it can be crippling, like our iPhones. Like you see people walking down the road, heads down constantly, or at a bus stop, all 7 people are looking at their phones. No one's talking to each other, looking up. That's where technology has really shit the bed. Honestly, it's not good. It's not been good for us. And from my Gen X perspective, I'm 48 years old. Technology has changed so much. I imagine generations before too, but my kids, I have 3 kids. My oldest is almost 16 and my youngest is 9, almost 10. And they have no idea what it was like to go from, for me, I did have records, or my sister did. I didn't have them, but cassettes, CDs, VHS and beta tapes, right? DVDs, Blu-ray, this and that. And then, because everything is on demand now. So to me, that's just something I've been thinking about a lot lately. And I think something, for Gen Xers and other folks that are older is still be amazed, still be happy. I see movies now, or I see video games now, and they look like movies. They look so real. It's amazing to me. And I think, giving younger folks that perspective that stuff didn't used to look this good at all is a big thing. So I hope to get some folks from the technology space maybe to learn about the evolution of, graphics in all different forms. For wellness, mental health for me over the past few months has been a huge deal. Mindfulness, meditation, medication, diet, exercise. And I exercised regularly. What I didn't do, though, was get enough sleep. I ate poorly. I had too many alcoholic drinks, and that catches up to you when you don't manage the stress of having sick family members and work and all this other stuff and kids and marriage and that kind of stuff. And so mental health and all the tools I've learned, and like we shared with Dr. Tracy Marks and like we'll share here in the near future, is going to be a huge aspect because it affects everything we do, whether it's at work or our personal lives or anywhere. And over the past couple of years, coming out of the pandemic and civil unrest and strife between race and demographic and the stuff we see on the news, people are hurting. People are hurting in their mind and their heart and their soul. And let's use this platform and other platforms to help, right? To help each other. One thing, I'm going to go off kind of on a tangent, that kind of bugs me is when folks have a big platform and they're like, no, you can't share this resource and it's self-promotion or this or that. Well, if I have a good interview or I have a good story or a good resource I can share that helps someone else, right, get better or meditate or deal with their anxiety, then why not do that, right? I'm not selling anything. This podcast is free. So anywho, physical health, of course, exercise, diet are key. There's really no mystery other than how dialed in you want to get those. But if you eat better and you exercise regularly, you'll lose weight, your blood pressure will go down, you'll get in better shape. And there's some genetic stuff, of course, that's bad for you. But that's one thing I learned, right? I was eating like crap. I was exercising. I was drinking too many beers. Was in, unhealthy, had some signs, before I had my panic attack of getting woozy and this and that. But lo and behold, you stop drinking and you eat way better and you lose weight and you get in better shape. And we'll get into that kind of stuff too, how we can improve like our VO2 max and respiratory and all that kind of stuff. In spiritual health, again, this is everyone's own journey, is their spirituality, their faith. And I'll share, if you go back and look on the KEV Talks podcast, because I imported all the stuff from the People Process Progress podcast or peopleprocessprogress.com site. There is a quote from the movie Kingdom of Heaven from the hospitaler who talks about he puts, no faith in religion, right? Because he's seen people basically do horrible things in that name. But really it's what you do, and he points to the head and the heart and what you're there. So you can believe, you can be Christian, Buddhist, Muslim. That's the great thing about this world. You can be whatever you want. Now, in some areas of the world, right, it's not super, even in, I live in Virginia in America. If you're outward, some people don't like it, but believing in something bigger than yourself, or as they say in Alcoholics Anonymous, your higher power, however you think about it, makes a big difference. If you want to believe in the Norse gods like Thor and them, fantastic. If you're a Olympian, Zeus and Hercules person, if you just want to believe in nature and that kind of stuff, or again, if you want to believe, you're Christian, awesome. But believing in that when you're going through a rough time makes a huge difference. And we'll talk about more of that on future episodes of spiritual health. Public safety, an area, again, that I've spent a lot of time in and a lot of my best friends are in. Post-traumatic stress, there's no getting around it. It happens. You can't be in kind of the big four, police, fire, EMS, and dispatch without being exposed to horrible, horrible stuff. Seeing dead things, hearing things, people get hurt, crying kids that maybe they're not even hurt, but they're in a horrible life situation where their parents are shitty and you can't do anything about it and you have to go home and, it's a tough thing. But so we'll talk about that for sure, dealing with it, not dealing with it, bad ways to deal with it. And we'll get into that in future episodes. Something I know I've readdressed with myself. Substance abuse is huge in public safety. It's huge in the military, right? Whether it's drugs, alcohol, other stuff. So it dampens, right? It's a depressant. Alcohol is a depressant in particular. So it is going to negatively affect you. And there's no getting around it. Alcohol is just not good for you, even a glass of wine. And if you go listen to Andrew Huberman's podcast about alcohol, the whole thing of a glass of red wine a day is good for you is actually not accurate. The amount of red wine you'd have to drink to get all the terpenes or whatever, all the stuff that they say is good for you is just an enormous amount. So at any rate, now, having said that, I'm not saying quit drinking alcohol if you choose not to, but just think about if you're going overboard, maybe give yourself a couple days. If it's hard to not drink, think about that. The other thing is public safety collaboration. And this I've talked about a lot, both on the Between the Slides podcast, on the People Process Progress podcast. But we unfortunately saw a really shitty example of collaboration with the Olvade shooting, right? One, it was an example of not responding while people are getting hurt and killed. But also, you could tell from the video, and again, not being there, that's hard to armchair quarterback a horrible situation, but you could tell, and you could read every after action report of other shootings, of other big responses, when agencies don't work together, you can tell when they don't work together on an emergency, they never practice it together before the emergency. And that is a failure from the highest level of leadership, right? That didn't say, we are going to conduct active shooter drills, and we are going to work with fire and EMS and police and dispatch and all the other partners we need to, emergency management. We're all going to go through it. We're going to use simunition so it freaks you out. If you've never trained hard and you get into a situation where you're being shot at, and I've never been in war or on a call where I was getting shot at. I've heard gunshots in your calls, but we would do our tactical combat casualty care class and use blanks and use simunition, and actors would scream, wailing like they were dying. And it freaks you out even in training. You're amped up. So it helps somewhat, right? When you get to the real thing, when you get on a call on the street. So those are just some areas that either I've thought about again, we'll be talking about, we'll be having guests to talk about, and that for me and my journey, I have addressed to help me get to a better place as a human, and hopefully here as a podcaster for you all. Because I really believe in this platform. I believe in you all sharing this message, and I hope it resonates. And if it does, again, please share the show. Give us a review on Apple Podcasts, other platforms, wherever you listen to it. Thank you all so much. The other thing you'll notice is I've got a different, I used to say, stay safe, wash your hands, and Godspeed. Kind of a joke, but washing your hands is hugely important. Single best to me public health thing that was ever invented or thought of or discovered. But now my focus is really to have a plan, stay informed, and get involved. So this kind of comes from some of these pillars from emergency management, where it's like make a kit, have a plan, stay informed, get involved, right? And this applies to life though, right? You should have a plan. What are you going to do if your power goes out? You should have a plan. What if we're out and I get a flat tire? Like, it doesn't have to be some crazy thing. Just think about it. Or to the level of paranoia, or obviously directly at work, if I'm a project manager, what is our plan going to be? That's where these foundational 5 things come into play. Check out KEVTalksPod.com, Foundation. You can read more about those foundational 5. And of course, I'll weave those in. I really believe in those, where if we can know our leader's intent, get some objectives, get an organizational structure put together, get resources, and communicate, that we can solve or get started solving any problem. So check that out. The other thing is stay informed, right? Stay informed, not like just turn the radio on, or not just watch Fox News or CNN or MSNBC or your preferred thing. Listen to all of them and put the pieces together, because again, the first information after an emergency is usually wrong or inaccurate, because people want to be first, not accurate. And it's bias, right? You can look at, there's a cool graphic, I think, that shows which way newscasts lean, left, right, middle, whatever. So pick one, or look at the left one, look at the right one, look at the ones in the middle, and then go, okay, this seems accurate. Tough too, right? Because with all the fake information on COVID or law enforcement or whatever that's been happening in the past couple of years, it's hard to discern what's true. So look at the different ones and see the commonalities, and then get involved. So how can you do that? You can volunteer, and I'll share resources when we talk about different topics. You can coach a youth football team like I'm doing. You can go give food at the food bank, or getting involved more with your family with, something you're already doing, but can you do a little bit more? Get more involved at work, help those new employees, help each other. Thank you so much for helping this show. I really appreciate it. I hope you enjoy the new intro. I love superhero stuff. I have a bunch of comic books, so these movies that are out. So that's why it sounds like I'm flying in and superhero landing and then flying out. And if you don't know that's what this sounds like, that's what it is. So thanks again so much for listening to the KEV Talks podcast. Got great interviews coming up that I hope are impactful, help change your life like they have changed mine. So remember, have a plan, stay informed, and get involved. I'll see you next time on the KEV Talks podcast. But for now, I've got to fly.